Get cool stuff for what you were going to do anyway. Drink beer. With Buy Beer, Get Gear from Labatt, you can just snap a photo of your receipt and upload it to the website to rack up points for exclusive merch. Get points for every purchase, whether you're grabbing a pint on draft, a case for a party, or a tall boy at the stadium. Any size, any product, anywhere you buy Labatt. Buy beer, get gear. Sign up now at rewards.labattusa.com.
Watch this.
Pass to a cutting Hiltz. He darts in.
Oh! People actually subscribe.
All across central New York.
Time expired! Syracuse has done it!
It's Drive Time with your host, Tim Leonard.
Hey, guess what? I'm getting one. Hey!
We welcome you into Drive Time. Under 2 hours away from maybe the biggest basketball game of the Adrian Autry era. The Orange and Tennessee for the third straight year tonight. Let's hope it goes better than the last 2 years against Tennessee. ACC-SEC Challenge, big one in the Dome tonight. Tennessee number 13 in the country. Tennessee, one of the better programs in the country year over year under Rick Barnes. And we'll see what Syracuse has in what is kind of scary, a must-win game at this point of the season, early December. But maybe the Orange's last chance to pick up a significant win for the next 4 or 5 weeks, probably, until you get to ACC play. So this is a really important game tonight for Syracuse. We'll dive into the matchup a little bit. What are the keys? What are the things to know about Tennessee? We will discuss the Volunteers with a full scan report on them. Also got to talk some football again. More football staff changes. The Orange are in the market for a new defensive coordinator after Elijah Robinson demoted today to co-defensive coordinator / defensive line coach. So basically, he is just a position coach at Syracuse now. He is the D-line coach, which he has been for the first couple years here, but he has been the guy calling the plays. He's not going to be calling the plays next year. And Fran Brown adds that to the list of coaching staff changes that they are making in advance of year 3 of the Fran Brown era. So heading into the offseason, heading into signing day tomorrow, which we talked a lot yesterday on the show about one of the Orange's recent commits, who is somehow a 25-year-old double platinum rapper. Tusi is one of the players that we expect to be signing tomorrow. We will hear from Fran Brown live during Orange Nation tomorrow for his full signing day press conference that'll occur right around 12:25 tomorrow. So it'll be interesting to see what types of questions are thrown at Fran Brown and how he handles said questions about not only the signing day class, which is important, and Syracuse is doing a good job, it seems like, of maintaining most of that recruiting class despite a 3-9 season. They did have one flip today, but overall they're still putting together a very solid recruiting class. And he will get asked about the decision to change things up defensively pretty dramatically and go to a new play caller on defense. Elijah Robinson will not be calling the plays next year. If you're listening yesterday on Drive Time, phone lines are open here at 315-437-7644, and we can take your phone calls right now if you'd like. We will chat with Adam Terry in just a little bit. We had a long conversation with Adam Terry because we had a lot to talk about. So that'll be coming in our second segment today. Always great to get Adam's thoughts on the team, and we'll wrap up the season, but also just get his thoughts on the coaching changes that are coming down the wire, and specifically this change that we found out about this morning, that Elijah Robinson is not going to be the main defensive coordinator next year. He's not going to be the one calling the plays. He is a co-DC, which is basically just a little bit of a prop up to a position coach title, like Robert Wright was a co-DC / linebackers coach before Fran Brown decided Robert Wright is one of the guys that is not coming back next year. So now we know of, compared to the start of the season, Miles White as well, 5 coaches that aren't returning, plus they're going to add in a new defensive coordinator. This is going to be a totally different staff come year 3 as opposed to year 2. Let's go to the phone lines right now, and let's start with our guy Nick in Vegas. He's kicking us off for the second straight day. What's up, Nick?
What's up, Tim? How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. What were your thoughts on the coaching staff changes we found out about today?
I think it's credit to Fran, right? He showed that he's got what it takes to make hard decisions.
Yeah.
So I was really impressed by that. And the reason why I'm calling, I got a scenario I want to throw at you. I think it makes too much sense not to entertain this.
All right.
So when Fran first got hired, Will Muschamp's son, Whit, came as a quarterback recruit and visited Syracuse.
Yep, I remember that.
He ended up choosing Vanderbilt. And now the reason why Will is not the DC at Georgia is because he took a reduced role to watch his son play.
Okay. So he's at Vandy right now? Will Muschamp?
He's at Vandy.
Okay.
And they're getting Jared Curtis tomorrow, so he'll never play over Curtis, right?
Yep. That's the kid who flipped from Georgia, right? Am I following this?
Yeah, the flip from Georgia, correct, yes. So now Fran's got a relationship with Will. He coached with him at Georgia. He's one of the best defensive minds in the game. And he wants to watch his son play, and we need a quarterback.
Yeah, and Will's a pretty good quarterback, right? I mean, that's my memory of it. He was a fairly highly rated recruit.
Yeah, he was a consensus 3-star.
Yep.
He's like 6'2", 220, good-sized kid for a quarterback, right?
Okay. I like where you're going with this, Nick. I think you're connecting some dots here. I mean, obviously, Fran Brown knows a lot of different guys around college football, and that's why we have applauded him for bringing in a Don Brown, bringing in a Kevin Coyle to start this season, Josh Gaddis. He's got a good network of coaches at his disposal. You don't make a move like this without kind of knowing a thought in your head of who could be a defensive coordinator that could fill in for Elijah Robinson and actually be calling the plays next year. And maybe Will Muschamp is a name. Will Muschamp's also a decorated coach, and I'm sure he's thinking about a lot of different options for him. So, but that's a fascinating one. I like the way you're connecting dots there.
And what better for E-Rob to learn from, right? So when Will does decide to retire or go elsewhere, you can groom E-Rob for the position to be ready for it when the time comes.
Yeah. No, good point, for sure. I think that'll be a name to monitor, and we'll see how quickly they move on this defensive coordinator position, because my gut tells me that Fran probably already has it in the back of his mind who maybe one or two guys that maybe he's already had conversations and kind of knows who he's going to be going with. Wouldn't be surprised by that.
Keep in mind, too, Tim, is if you get somebody like a Muschamp from Georgia, he's going to take some players with him.
Yeah. And we know Fran knows the Georgia players pretty well, too. So, obviously,
Correct.
I would not be surprised if he taps into that well once again. I mean, I'm sure that there is still some overlap of guys that he coached and recruited at Georgia that now aren't playing as much as they want, and maybe he could tap into that. He's already tapped into that quite a bit in his first 2 years.
One of those kids is Daniel Harris.
Yeah.
He recruited him from Rutgers when he was there, and he said, I want to play for Coach Fran, and now he's in the portal, so I'm sure that's one to watch as well. But it just makes too much sense. Like, you got to really monitor that.
Yeah, and I'll say this. If it is Will Muschamp, that's a pretty significant upgrade. That would be a good get for Syracuse, and that would speak volumes to Fran Brown's connections and everything. So, good insight there, Nick. I like what you're doing. You're connecting some dots for us. I appreciate it.
Well, let's hope it works out, right? That's all we can do.
All right. There is Nick in Las Vegas kicking us off on the phones again today. So we do have to work in an early timeout. Oh, we got Mark in New York City. Mark, we'll go to you. Then we'll get into our first break before Adam Terry joins us in the next segment. Mark, what is on your mind today?
Hey, TL. I feel like I got to call you TL now after that nickname.
This is going to become a thing, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. That's going to be a thing for sure.
Yeah.
Wow, I really love that Will Muschamp call by Nick in Vegas. I think there's really something there because I remember Fran Brown in numerous press conferences early on, always mentioned texting with Will Muschamp and being a mentor. I think Will Muschamp was a top target for Auburn as defensive coordinator, and Auburn just announced that they're retaining DJ Durkin. So, maybe there's something there. I want to give Nick in Vegas credit. two things here. One, are we putting to bed on the Tim Leonard or the TL radar Fran Brown to Penn State? They still don't have a coach. It's signing day tomorrow. Or is that 0% now?
It's 0%, but I will say this. Did you see, I think it was Todd McShay was on Bill Simmons' podcast. It dropped maybe yesterday or this morning, and Todd McShay floated that what's happening with Penn State is Jimmy Sexton, who we know is the super agent and the agent of Fran Brown, and is the agent of, I think, 14 of the 16 SEC coaches. So he controls a lot of college football right now. He was saying that Jimmy Sexton was not happy with Pat Kraft, the Penn State AD, for how he handled his client, James Franklin. And he is basically at war with Pat Kraft and making sure that every coach that Pat Kraft wants that is a client of his, he is re-signing them to their school. So, BYU's coach just looks like he's about to ink a contract extension. Penn State's running out of options, and they have the 130th ranked recruiting class in the country for this year. Now, granted, they're going to have some time before the next signing day, but that's not a good situation. They were one of the first schools to open up that position, and they still haven't found a head coach, and it doesn't seem like they're going to get the head coach they want, or at least at the top of their list at the start of this thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a mess there. And I mean, I remember bringing up earlier on Fran Brown definitely has some bad blood with Pat Kraft. I think he had interviewed for the Temple job when Pat Kraft was over at Temple. So don't know what's going on there. Just want to, I know you got to go to a break soon, but just want to quickly mention something on Syracuse basketball. I think you mentioned, this probably is the biggest game in the Red Autry era. I'm just looking at some numbers here. In quad one games, Autry is 3-20 in his career as head coach. I mean, that's a pretty tough stat right there. I believe he's on currently a 14-game losing streak against quad one opponents. And in those 20 quad one losses, Syracuse has lost by an average of 19 points. I mean, the games aren't even close in these quad one games. I know Penn State fired James Franklin for not being able to win the big games. And, maybe we're seeing something here with Red Autry just not being able to win these big games and really kind of getting Syracuse over the hump here. So really curious to see how this plays out. And if we get a 15 straight quad one loss tonight, I mean, I think that seat is going to be cooler than ever.
Yes, yeah, I hear you on that, Mark. That is the glaring stat right now. We always appreciate Mark in New York City for chiming in. That's the glaring stat right now in the Adrian Autry era to this point. And it's pretty simple. Moral victories aren't going to cut it anymore. They've got to find a way to win this game tonight, or else it is a very tough path to playing meaningful games in March. And that is what John Wildtech said on these airwaves when he was asked about Adrian Autry's tenure and the chances of Adrian Autry kind of keeping his job and where he's at. Last year, he said, you got to play meaningful games in March. And in order to play meaningful games in March, you usually got to bag a non-conference win that matters, and this is Syracuse's last chance to do that, or else they're going to have to really play some good basketball in the ACC, and they got to have the ACC also really play some good basketball around them. That's a tough formula to have. We'll hit our first time out. We'll chat with Adam Terry about the football coaching staff changes as we return on Drive Time.
John Frost.
All right, let's do some homework on Will Muschamp, because obviously we know he's at Georgia. Nick, I thought for a second you were saying he went to Vandy. I wasn't up on the Will Muschamp. Wiki, which never lies, Wikipedia is saying he's the defensive analyst for Georgia right now. Yeah, Jack Stonehouse, shout out to him. All ACC. Yeah, I don't think he's at Vandy. I think Nick thought I was talking about his son, probably. All right, so he went, according to Wikipedia, Florida head coach, we remember that, 2015 Auburn, D.C. Then he was at South Carolina for 5 years. Then he went right to Georgia, special teams coordinator, co-DC at Georgia. Overlap with Fran, a good deal there. And right now it says Georgia defensive analyst. I don't think Fran makes the move of demoting Elijah Robinson without knowing that he's got some pretty good options. Yes, right. His son went to Vandy. Affiliated with Georgia, no specific role. Okay. He's clearly looking for a new gig, I would think, right? Then, if he's only just defensive analyst. Defensive analyst for UGA, yeah. What his son is? Okay, cool. That's what I thought. At first, I must have misheard you. I thought you were saying like he followed his son or something like that. You said something like he took a smaller role. Oh, I see. Maybe you're talking about like so he could see his son play. Whit Muschamp. That's an elite name. If you're not a good athlete with that name, then I don't know what to tell you. Let's see. Whit Muschamp, sophomore, 2 for 3 this year, hardly playing. 6'1", 190 is what ESPN says. I think you were saying a little taller and a little bigger, Nick. I have heard that Fran is going to shell out a decent amount of money for backup quarterback, which I think he probably should. Interesting point, Cuse in the house. We're all doing some good connecting of the dots here in the chat. That's the one firing so far that was kind of confusing. Brumfield. What's up, Kev? And then you also think, I was trying to like make sense of it, and we'll talk about this with Adam. Signing day presser tomorrow, yeah, 12:25 is the scheduled time, so we'll air it on Orange Nation. I was trying to we'll get into it with Adam, but I was trying to connect the dots of why those 4 coaches. And you know, someone called in and wondered why Nick Williams still has a job, and it made me think he's a good recruiter. What's up, Gavendo? And he's not a senior, Kusa. He's not a senior, right? I think he's only like a sophomore. I mean, he was just visiting when Fran was the coach, so he can't be more than a sophomore in standing. He might be actually more like a red shirt, you know?
Your favorite ESPN Syracuse sports talk shows on QSportsTalk.com.
Welcome back into Drive Time. Off and running with lots to discuss again this afternoon. Orange basketball tonight. As promised, at some point we will get into a Tennessee scouting report, give you all the details you need to know about Tennessee. Gio will have you covered for pregame 6 to 7. I'll be back for postgame tonight after the biggest game of the Adrian Autry era. I'm sure we'll have lots to discuss tonight when we get together right after the final buzzer for postgame on QSportsTalk.com and ESPN Radio. We will have the full press conference from Adrian Autry. So if you're driving into the game now, keep us in mind when you're driving out of the game tonight. And hopefully everyone is staying safe out there. It sounds like the roads are getting better than they were this morning. But without further ado, let's get into my conversation I recorded earlier today with one Adam Terry. Always great to catch up with Adam, and we had lots to discuss, so we chatted for a while about the new coaching changes and what to make of year 2 of the Fran Brown tenure. Here is my conversation from earlier today with Adam Terry. All right, time now to bring on Adam Terry, as we do every single week, and this will be our final visit with Adam Terry for a little bit as we put to bed the 3-9 football season for the Orange, and year 2 wrapping up under Fran Brown, and a lot of coaching staff changes are coming in advance of the offseason and year 3. Adam, just your reaction to all the coaching staff changes that have come down, officially announced earlier today. 4 assistant coaches were fired yesterday. There were reports of that. And then today, the big news, Elijah Robinson being demoted from defensive coordinator to now listed as a co-defensive coordinator and a defensive line coach for the Orange. Are you surprised at all based on what Fran was saying that he made this many moves, or did any of these particular moves surprise you in any way?
Well, the amount, yes, definitely surprising. I think you saw the writing on the wall after the initial shuffle when Miles White got ousted, and then the shuffling of just coaches in different positions. So, yeah, no, it's a little bit surprising because of the sheer volume, how many guys. But also, with that being said, you were 3-9, right? So at the end of that, like, you have to do some introspection and look in the mirror and say, hey, you know, why are we here? What can I do as a head coach? What can we do as an organization to move forward and move into a better direction? And it's the positions that were, you know, a guy like Dale Williams, I think he's a good guy. I hold him in high regard. And it's an unfortunate thing, but, you know, that is the life of coaches. You're in a situation where it's I went through a coaching staff change, but I never really saw it when I was in college. I was at the back end when Coach P got fired, but it's a lonely day as a coach in college football, and I've been, you know, hired and fired when I was in the NFL too. It's there's a lot of difficult decisions that go through in order to see what direction you want to take this endeavor. And for a guy like Fran Brown, coming off of that high from last year, the 10-win season, into what we knew would be a tougher go. Everybody knew that. I mean, you had either number one or number two toughest schedule in the country at the beginning of the season. You knew it was going to be a difficult task. And there were a couple misses on personnel as far as player-wise goes. And I think when you're looking at a college coach right now, you have to be a great positional coach. You have to be also a great recruiter. And that will be interesting to see how he fills these voids that have been now created. But, you know, never a good day if you're a player in some of those meeting rooms or if you're a coach, because for a lot of guys, that might be the reason that you went to that school outside of, you know, loving the environment, the education. But, you know, the person that you're in a lot of contact with is that position coach as well as the strength coach.
Yeah, I do think some of this is Fran is just a guy that is always going to be constantly tinkering with the staff or looking to make changes. I know they won 10 games last year, so there weren't a lot of changes that needed to be made, but he did make a change to the special teams coach. Now he's going to add in a third special teams coach in 3 years here. Do you like that about Fran, that he's constantly evaluating? And I feel like even if this was a successful season, or say they won 6 games in a tough schedule year, he probably would have evaluated and made changes. And I'm just expecting every year with Fran Brown, based on how he's talked about his coaches, I think he takes a lot of pride in having a good staff. And like you said, having good recruiters on the staff. And he's probably going to be the type of coach that is tinkering quite a bit with his staff, I guess.
Yeah, I think that is the crucial thing. If you're going to be a college head coach right now and you want to be in the top 25, you've got to do a great job all the way across the board. It's not just being a great OC or DC and then getting a coaching job. It's you're a great recruiter that can put the Jimmys and Joes out there, but then what it seems as though he felt that the team didn't develop well enough. And if you're going out and you're getting these guys that are 3, 4, 5 stars, yes, a 5-star might be closer physically to be on the field, but it's also a situation where are they mentally closer to being on the field? And when you're trying to flip the roster entirely, the world of the portal is one thing, but you've also got to equate it to the portal. To me, is free agency in the NFL. And then you look at the ability to build the roster, build the depth, And it might take a year or two, 3 years. But that's going to come from what I view it as the draft, and that is the ability to go out there and recruit guys and find talent that you like. It's a tough go. I think it's a tough decision all the way around. But, for the direction of Syracuse, I am behind Fran with what he's done. And now the direction of, who are you going to put in those places is going to be the key one.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you next. Do you have any feel for what type of defensive coordinator Fran Brown might be looking for? I guess it's just impossible to guess right now, but we know that he is searching for a new defensive coordinator. I kind of go off what we know to this point, which is it seems like he wants his defense to have an identity of being aggressive, a blitz-heavy defense. I think one question that comes out of this is, will we see the Orange in a 4-2-5 scheme next year? Will we see a defensive coordinator come in that brings in a different scheme? Do you have any thoughts on what will be best in terms of what Fran Brown should be looking for in the next defensive coordinator?
I think when you're looking at the defense, and I know you want to be aggressive, you want to be tough, you want to be physical, you want to be violent. Those are characteristics that just jump off the top of your head when you're thinking about defenses. And, having been in the world of the Baltimore Ravens and the solid defenses and, arguably one of the best defenses ever, it is. I mean, those are the characteristics that you want to see out of the players. And then the coordinator is, you've got to play those chess pieces appropriately. And sometimes, we were multiple throughout the course of my career, but when you had a couple different pieces there that you could rely on, the multiplicity kind of narrowed itself a little bit more into what are we best at? Who do we have the personnel to match up appropriately? So do I see us in a 4-2-5? I see us as an even front. I don't think we go into an odd front at all. But, the detriment to what we had this year is, a guy like Devin Grant, a guy like Deuce Chestnut not being healthy. So it is the 4-2-5 the appropriate defense? That's to turn on the film and look at it. But when you don't have a couple guys that you've been relying on, they got a lot of reps and are veterans and have a potential to go play in the NFL, that's a very difficult task to not only play call, but also when young guys in there and do young guy mistakes, you don't have anybody else in there. So when I look at the defensive coordinator, it's going to be a great communicator, somebody that can really get these guys behind him, a great recruiter, but also a cerebral guy that's going to want to lock himself in the film room and study and make sure that the personnel that he has and apply that to the defense that's called out on the field.
Yeah, definitely probably, if anything, underrated just how injured Deuce Chestnut, Devin Grant were throughout this season. And Fran Brown said it in his last press conference, and we'll get a chance to hear from the head coach tomorrow when he speaks on National Signing Day, and I'm sure he'll be asked about these coaching changes. But he did say in his last press conference that Devin Grant's out there limping, and that played a factor. And, Derek McDonald, they're hoping to get back. So they lost a lot of veteran pieces. And I guess that leads me into my next point, where I made the point yesterday on the show that I do feel like they need to bring in a good amount of experience in the transfer portal. And I know that Fran is a coach that wants to build through the high school ranks, and he's been very successful at getting high school talent in the door, and he's going to do that tomorrow when the National Signing Day class is announced. And it's one of the better classes we've seen at Syracuse in a while, which I think should be applauded. But when you look at the roster, how much do you feel like, yes, it's a young team right now that's going to get a little bit more experience, and they did get some good seasoning this year. But I guess for me, I'm specifically looking at offensive line and defensive line, and I worry a little bit that if they just bring everyone back and add a little bit in the portal there, it might not be enough to have enough experience in the trenches. Is that something that you kind of agree with, or what's your thought process on what are the big portal priorities for Fran Brown and Syracuse? Well,
just looking at the offensive line, I think that when when you take away, you saw a guy like Austin Collins come in this year. He was banged up. Joe Cruz is probably playing the center position, out of position. And then we saw a couple young guys get in there. A guy like Cam Pringle, who's a transfer guy, a homegrown prospect, and Byron Washington and his ability to get out there. The portal in the world of an offensive line is a little bit more difficult because, in my eyes, you have to develop that camaraderie over a period of time. And we might go through another growing pain of guys learning and developing, and I think that's across the board. I'm just not 100% sure whether or not in a big market, in a large economy of dollars and cents being thrown around, i.e. like a Texas Tech or an Oklahoma or things of that nature, if we can match up and get those marquee guys just solely off of dollars and cents. Now, they're going to have to buy into the vision of the program, and they're going to have to buy into Fran Brown and everything that he's about and the dark culture that he's created. But I believe that developing homegrown talent is probably the best possibility for O-line and D-line, because if they do succeed, you got to keep them now. But going out there, I don't know if we can get a guy like Sabian Washington, who last year developed slowly, and not in the sense of he can't play football. He was a very good football player, went to the Chargers as an undrafted free agent. But what I'm saying behind that is, everybody has to mesh together because there's a lot of calls, there's a lot of assignment alignment techniques that change at the drop of a dime. When you're looking at the offensive line, that has to be a tight-knit group. And if there's any discrepancy of whether or not they're a tight-knit group, that really can affect the course of the season. So everybody, in my eyes, is excited that Steve Angeli's coming back. Now there's questions regarding an Achilles is a tough injury to come back from. Now he's younger and he's got a lot of attributes that are probably going to help him. But, the people have to, the people in front of him, those 5 guys, probably 5 to 7 guys throughout the course of the season, have to keep them upright in order for us to go back to this year and feel success out of those first 4 games that we were feeling once again.
I guess another way to ask the offensive line question, and I agree with pretty much everything you just said there. Fran's talking about we'll have Byron Washington back, we'll have Trey Mack back, and it seems like he's sort of banking on those guys to be foundational pieces. There already are kind of foundational pieces, and we saw Byron Washington play some this year. And I do think Fran has the size in the offensive line group and even in the defensive line group as well now compared to other Syracuse teams. So that's an improvement. But another way to ask that maybe is, as a former offensive lineman yourself, how much did you feel you grew from freshman to sophomore year? And how much better of a player were you when you were a junior, senior? Like, should we expect a big leap from Byron Washington, freshman to sophomore year?
Well, I think you're going to see a bigger jump in a kid like Travian Mack. The guys that are a little bit older that have now time under their belt. I remember at the end of my sophomore year, I went into training camp the next year with George DeLeon, and I was fighting for my life. We had another kid, Jason Green, who was, competition is what made me better. There was a guy out of Somerville, New Jersey, Jason Green, who George was trying to get to play left tackle as well and potentially supplant me. But my game from my sophomore to junior year was pretty significant. And then that jump to an All Big East candidate and honorable mention stuff nationally to that next jump my senior year where I was pitted against a lot of the best pass rushers in the country and arguably the draft in the next 2 years. But it wasn't until like that sophomore year I got better. But that sophomore to junior is really where I made leaps and bounds and made that progression. So to see, I would say that some of the older guys are going to make the bigger jumps. But a guy like Byron Washington, he will see a jump. I just don't know how far. And in reality, that jump is going to be contingent upon who is the person in that room. So I think the offensive line coach, since they parted ways with Dale Williams, is going to be a pivotal hire. And then especially at that linebacker position, I think that is going to be another pivotal hire because there wasn't as much depth in that linebacker room that we've seen in the past. So not only 2 new coaches in pivotal roles, but also 2 new coaches, one in a depleted room, the linebacker room, and then another one on that offensive side of the ball that is the offense will go as far as the offensive line goes this next year, in my eyes, because you need to establish a run game, and then you've also got to be able to keep Angeli on his feet, and you can't be a one-trick pony now in college football. And I know that's Jeff Nixon knows that, and that's what his MO is yeah, I'm going to throw the ball a little bit more and then run the football, but I also know I have to have a tough, physical, hard-nosed offensive line when it comes to those points during a season when it's like, okay, we're playing Boston College in the snow. We got to be able to do this. You know, it's not always going down to Miami in the heat and having a track meet. Some of the times you got to get those plodding horses out there and move some bodies.
Last thing for you, Adam. You bring up Jeff Nixon, and it seems like he will be back next year, and Fran Brown has said that already as the offensive coordinator. Fran did say something I thought was kind of interesting in his post-game press conference after Boston College, where he sort of hinted at, we learned this year that it's an NFL-style offense, and if you have the right quarterback, it can be really good, like a Steve Angeli, a Kyle McCord. But we're going to have to do some things differently, and I'm paraphrasing him a little bit, but he sort of said, like, we're already making some changes so that if it isn't that Steve Angeli, then we can pivot off of kind of a complex offense, the NFL style of offense that Jeff Nixon uses. What's your sense of just how complex Jeff Nixon's offense is, and how much of the backup quarterback struggling was they were put in a tough position because it is kind of a complex offense, or are we reading into that too much?
I don't feel as though the complexity of the offense is the downfall.
Yeah.
I believe that some of the guys that were plugged in to play specific positions weren't ready at that point in time. You know, I think, you know, for instance, watching a guy like Ricky Collins practice and throw the football, I think he has all of those intangibles. But obviously something wasn't either being communicated or it wasn't sinking in for him to make that next jump. So I think it was Greg Olson at one point was talking on his podcast about just how a lot of these players in different sports have this technical aspect that is far superior than when I went to college or he went to college. You know, I look at my own son, and my son is technically far superior and strength-wise far superior than I was when I entered college. Now, the biggest development that I'm seeing of a lot of these guys when they get to college is they have all this technical ability, and sometimes they can trick you into believing that they have it all when they don't. So, you know, looking at a guy like Ricky Collins, like, can he develop into a good quarterback? I don't know. You look at a guy like Carlos Del Rio Wilson, who could throw the ball. He had a strong arm. He was a big physical guy. And then you look at it and say, is it the right methodology for him? Is it the right playbook for him? I don't necessarily Jeff Nixon deviating from what he does and why he does it so well is we should throw that away. We shouldn't look at that at all. What we have to do is find the people that will be able to fit into those roles and not try to take a round peg in a square hole and make it fit. So the IQ portion for a lot of these guys, and as I'm going around the country right now with my son, it's you can be a better prospect if you know the X's and the O's, and you can have conversations that are not at a lower level, right? Like bigger, faster, stronger, all of those things, the technique, the aspects of that all need to come. But the computer that drives it, the IQ, the brain, the ability to make changes on a fly, understanding the schematics so that if one of your guys gets blocked by a wide receiver, you make the adjustment to the guy that he was supposed to block because you know the scheme and you know the offense, and it's a spider web, right? As you take one of the little webbings off of it, it slides, it still maintains, but you have to be able to do that. And for a young team, that's very difficult. A veteran-laden team like we had last year, there were a lot of good players on that team, and they could make a lot of decisions, and they could make a lot of shifts out on the field very quickly to make that successful. And that is the biggest thing that you'll see this year. And with the coaching changes, hopefully you get to see that even faster, is just that film room study, going out on the field and making sure that you understand who, what, when, where, how, and why of every play and the little nuances of every play. So those are the key things that, I might be throwing a bubble screen right now, but that defensive end has the ability to jet up the field, get his hands. Well, two or 3 weeks ago, he might have picked that off and run it for a touchdown. Now I hold it one more second, and then I get that ball out. Those are the little nuances that you need to have, and the detail of playing on an offensive side of the football. Defensive side of the football is the same exact way. If you know where to be and how to do it, that's half the battle, but then it's actually when it all blows up and everything's hitting the fan, can I make the adjustment appropriately at the minutia in order to get it done?
Yeah, it's well said. And as you were going through that, I was thinking this sort of embodies what Steve Angeli is about. I think that is the good news for Syracuse football. Steve has those traits and clearly is a high IQ player, and you just got to hope that he stays healthy as QB1 next year coming off the Achilles injury. Well, Adam, we appreciate your time throughout the season. I'm sure we'll catch up with you down the road as the offseason happens and we find out about the major moves in the offseason. But appreciate your time as always today.
All right. Thanks for a good season. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, there is Adam Terry. We'll get into a Tennessee scouting report as we return, talk a little basketball on the other side. You're listening to Drive Time.
What makes Flintstone?
I will say this. I mean, they get Will Muschamp. It's a pretty ridiculously good hire. Like, Will Muschamp wasn't coming to Syracuse pre-Fran Brown. I mean, I don't know what schools would offer him right now, and he's clearly going for like a reduced role with his son, like Nick was saying. So maybe they're kind of catching him at the right time, but that's a big-time defensive coordinator if he is the next DC at Syracuse. I mean, he's got a lot of pedigree. Yeah, it's all because we got Tusi. That's right. Whit Muschamp doesn't seem like he would be in line to take over for Diego Pavia, though, based on what I was looking up and reading as I was also talking to Adam somehow there. I was multitasking. Nebraska can make some sense. Who do they have right now with Matt Rule? Did they fire someone recently? Yeah, what I don't know, Theo Hughes, how much is this guy actually like? How much money has he made? Paulie said on the show on Orange Nation Day, he was like, he's a multi-millionaire. And I was like, is he? Like, I'm just not really familiar. I know obviously he's a huge name to a lot of people. I just don't have a great sense of, I mean, he's 25. Is he really a multi-millionaire? Can we find like his, not that, I mean, your point holds too. I mean, he's not going to live in Skytop. That would feel wrong. Net worth. Can we find info on that? Probably not. Recent coverage around his Syracuse Orange commitment described him as the richest player on the roster. One detailed report said public estimates put his net worth between roughly $2 million and $3 million. Well, you got to believe everything you read on the internet, so I guess he's a multimillionaire. I don't know. That seems right, I guess. I'm just not really sure. I want Rob to call back so I can ask him why the heck he called me TL. I mean, it's not the first time someone's called me by my initials, but it just kind of came out of left field. Yeah, he's got to be worth a good amount of money, Kev. I don't know. Is this kid actually going to step on campus and play? Like, if we were doing pick a percent of that? Does feel like, I guess he got some new fans yesterday, I'm sure. I'm sure he's getting something out of it. Not that he's probably truly just wants to play football, but I mean, he's not going to play for Syracuse, right? So is it a good idea in theory? And then when he gets here and he's a student and he's going through the workouts and practice and he's just riding the bench, is he like, nah, this isn't as glamorous as I thought, I'm out? Yeah, he's not a legitimate player unless he's completely transformed his game while rapping and not playing football for the last 8 years, which obviously isn't the case. Welcome back into Drive Time. Big basketball game tonight for the Orange. Just caught up with Adam Terry. Talked about all the football staff changes that are coming. We'll have pregame for you at the top of the hour. Gio will be in for Orange basketball pregame, brought to you by Burdick, as always. And then I'll be back for postgame, taking your phone calls deep into the night. Not really. It'll be like 9 to 10 p.m., but that's kind of late night. Not as late night as some of the other games we'll have this year with some of these wonky 9 p.m. starts, but I hope some of you are driving around right now, driving safely through some of the snowy conditions, making your way into the Dome, and this will be a big one here for the Orange this evening. Let's give you a little bit of info on Tennessee, and we know Tennessee is always led by their defense. Really remarkable just how good of a defensive program they have been under Rick Barnes. They did just make a trip to Vegas where they went 2-1. They raced past Rutgers in the first game, 85-60. They beat Houston, who the Orange played very closely, and their trip to Vegas, they clipped Houston by 3. Tennessee did 76-73 and lost to another common opponent in Kansas. Kind of blew that game in the second half, lost by 5, 81-76. Tennessee is 13th in the AP poll. They are 12 on KenPom. They are 11th in the net rankings. They are 10th in the Bart Torvik rankings. And they enter at 7-1 on the season. The Vols are 79-8 against unranked non-conference opponents under Rick Barnes, who has been there since 2016. Different look to their roster this year. They only return about 23% of their minutes and production from last year. Lost 3 starters. Felix Okpara is back as a very good rim protector for them, and they have added some nice pieces in the portal as well as in their freshman recruiting class. Arguably their best player, their most talented player, is Nate Ament, who is averaging 18 points per game as a true freshman. He is one of those freshmen that is gathering the headlines in this group of freshmen that is supposed to be the best freshman class in college basketball in a very long time. He goes by the nickname of Baby Durant because he's 6'9", maybe 6'10", depending on where you look, and apparently he's still growing as well. And he is a rangy, very good 3-level scorer. Top 5 freshman in this class and projected to be a top 5 pick in the NBA draft this upcoming year. So Nate Ament is their most talented player. Think of him kind of like the Dalton Connect of recent teams for Tennessee. Then there's Jacoby Gillespie, who they added out of the portal this year, transfer in from Maryland, who had a very nice game last year against Syracuse when Maryland ran away from one against the Orange in Brooklyn. Gillespie went for 17 points, 11 assists, 5 rebounds. When he was at Maryland, he is a preseason second-team All-SEC player. He's a great offensive player, and he might be a better defensive player. At the point of attack, he is an elite defender on the perimeter, and it's going to be very interesting to see how Nathan George does handling Tennessee's pressure tonight. Nathan George has struggled when he's been getting blitzed in ball screen coverage, and Nathan George had 7 turnovers in the last game. The Orange went from a 2-turnover game against Kansas to a 19-turnover game against Iowa State. They have to be better at protecting the basketball tonight, and Tennessee has a good amount of size, obviously, down low. They're a very good rebounding team, specifically on the offensive glass, 3rd in the nation in offensive rebound rate, but they're also just a very good, sound defensive team. They have finished in the top 5 in each of the last 5 seasons in Ken Palm's defensive rating under Rick Barnes. Think about that. Top 5 defense in the country 5 straight years. This year, they check in at 13th in the country defensively, 18th in the country offensively, according to Ken Palm. And right now, they are team number 12 overall in Ken Palm's metrics. We know this is a very important game for the Orange, and we know that rebounding is going to be a major key. They have to keep Tennessee off of the offensive glass. So that is probably the number one key in this game. And Jacoby Gillespie, who has been playing better and better in his first year at Tennessee, is kind of their engine at the point guard spot. He's the main guy that you want to hold in check. Nate Ament, as one of their top scorers, is also, of course, a key fixture for Tennessee. So that's a little bit of a scatter report on the Volunteers. That game tipping off at 7 p.m. We'll have pregame for you in about 9 minutes. We'll wrap up Drive Time as we return with some shout-outs on the other side on ESPN Radio.
Ask a pro golfer.
They do have a little bit of a gauntlet bowling ball. I saw that. Yeah, Dom, Roseville High School right by me. Not the most prominent school, really. Relatively new school. I think it's 2013 is when Roseville became a thing. I could reach out to his high school coach, although he would probably tell us, like, yeah, we haven't had, I mean, I don't even know. It's probably not the same high school coach. It's been 10 years. I think what he'd tell us is he was just kind of an okay high school player. I mean, it wasn't, you could go look at his highlight tape and like 2 minutes in, he's running a jet sweep for 5 yards. I mean, you don't have that early on in your highlight tape if you're not, you know, stretching to put together a highlight tape. So I'm not expecting him to be much as a football player, but that's not really why they added him. We have reached out to him to come on Orange Nation, and I have not heard back. I'm sure he's getting bombarded with requests right now. Philly, I'm pretty sure Autry said specifically they're blitzing him and we've got to adjust. And if you look at what teams blitzed, it was Houston and it was Iowa State, and Kansas did not blitz. And George had no turnovers against Kansas, and he had several turnovers against Houston and Iowa State. But I agree with you. I think the problem with George, not that he's like a bad player, but I think you would like one of your leading scorers to either be dynamic off the dribble or a good shooter. And he's kind of just okay off the dribble and an okay shooter. I would say even not just the turnover stats, but just anecdotally, like I did not think they handled the blitzing and the ball screen coverages that Houston and Iowa State threw at them as well as they did against Kansas. And I didn't think that Cayenne handled blitzing well either when he was blitzed by Monmouth and Houston. I would say what they what Iowa State did a very good job of was not really allowing Syracuse to get into their offense as quickly as they would like by pushing Nate George away from the basket. And I'm sure Tennessee will do the same. I think they actually got a fair amount of good looks against Kansas. They shot it terrible against Kansas. Then they shot it fairly well in the first half against Iowa State in terms of threes, and it didn't really feel sustainable at halftime. I mean, I do care about the turnovers. Like, you can't have 7 turnovers as a point guard. I'm just not sure that Iowa State was not blitzing him in the second half. Like, I don't think that. I don't know. I'm fairly confident that Autry said afterwards too, like, we've got to make some adjustments and got to get Nate a little bit more comfortable against some of the stuff they're doing against him. Yeah, I agree, Sport Boy. Especially early second half, they just missed a lot of shots against Kansas.
Watch your favorite ESPN Syracuse sports talk shows on QSportsTalk.com.
All right, wrapping things up, kind of transitioning you to our basketball pregame coverage with our guy Gio Heater. Looks like Penn State still doesn't have a head coach, so I was going to shout out Jimmy Sexton, who is just controlling college football right now. It is kind of fun to watch Penn State crumble a good bit at the moment. They have the 130th ranked recruiting class in the country. That is not good. Syracuse is in the 26th, 25th spot, I think, at last look on 24/7 Sports. So tomorrow on the shows, specifically Orange Nation tomorrow, we will have Fran Brown's full press conference on National Signing Day. Maybe we'll see if he has any intel on Tusi, the latest commit, the multi-platinum rapper that is joining Syracuse football. There's been a lot of weird stories this week. I'm sure I'll get asked about Elijah Robinson and his demotion and what he's thinking for the next defensive coordinator at Syracuse. So there'll be a lot to dive into tomorrow. We will not have drive time tomorrow because Orange women's basketball will be in the ACC SEC Challenge tomorrow at 5 p.m., kind of an earlier tip than normal, 5 p.m. for them against Auburn. Orange women's team is 41st in the net rankings. They're off to a pretty nice start to the year. Syracuse men's team really needs a win. They are 90th in the net rankings. They play Tennessee tonight. Gio will have you covered with pregame. So just rejoin us on QSportsTalk.com or on the radio airwaves. Just wait a little bit, and Gio will be back with you for pregame. I'll be back for postgame after the final buzzer tonight between Syracuse and Tennessee. Till next time, thanks for listening to Drive Time on ESPN Radio.
This is